Three figures, three civilizations, three stories that might be telling the same truth. A god born of a virgin, a divine child visited by wise men, a savior who dies and rises again. These aren't details from one holy book. They appear across thousands of years, in cultures that never spoke the same language, never shared a border. Today, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and most debated questions in the history of religion. Are Jesus of Nazareth, Horus of Egypt, and Mithra of Persia three different gods, or echoes of the same ancient story? Before we dive into the parallels, let's be clear about something important. This video is not an attack on Christianity or on any religion. We're here to do what historians, archaeologists, and religious scholars do every day: examine evidence, trace patterns, and ask questions. And this question has been circling academic circles for over 200 years. Scholars like Gerald Massey, Kersey Graves, and more recently Timothy Freak and Peter Gandy have pointed to striking similarities between the Christ narrative and much older religious traditions. To understand the story of Jesus in its full context, we need to travel back, way back, to Egypt, approximately 3,000 years before the Common Era. A civilization obsessed with the cycle of life, death, and resurrection. A civilization that had already built one of history's most complex theological systems. And at the center of that system was a god named Horus. Then, roughly 1,400 years before Christ, in the vast territories of ancient Persia, a mystery religion was quietly forming around a figure called Mithra, a cosmic deity of light, truth, and the sacred covenant between heaven and earth. By the time Jesus of Nazareth walked the roads of Galilee, both Horus and Mithra had been worshipped for centuries, possibly millennia. So when we find similarities in their stories, we have to ask, is it a coincidence, borrowing, or something deeper? Perhaps a universal human need to tell the same story over and over again. Horus. In Egyptian mythology, he is the falcon-headed god, son of Osiris and Isis. His story is one of the oldest recorded myths in human history, and it contains elements that will sound remarkably familiar. According to the pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings ever discovered, dating back to around 2400 BCE, Horus was born of Isis, who had conceived him without a living partner. Osiris, his father, was already dead. Isis, a mother, a protector, a goddess who gave birth to a divine child in extraordinary circumstances. Both Horus and Jesus were born of a divine mother under supernatural circumstances. Both had their birth announced by a star. Both were sought by a jealous and powerful ruler who wanted them dead. Both battled the forces of evil, and both died and were resurrected. Horus was even called the Way, the Truth, and the Light, centuries before those same words were written in the Gospel of John. Now, some of these parallels are more nuanced than they first appear. The conception of Horus involved Isis using magic after Osiris was killed. It wasn't identical to the Gospel account. But the structural similarities, a divine child born under supernatural circumstances, destined to battle evil and ultimately conquer death, those are undeniable. Now let's travel to Persia, and later, Rome. Mithra originated in Vedic India and ancient Persia as a deity of covenants and sacred light. By the height of the Roman Empire, Mithraism had become one of Christianity's most serious competitors. And the similarities were striking enough that early church fathers, men like Tertullian and Justin Martyr, actually wrote about them. Their explanation? They called it diabolical mimicry. The devil, they argued, had copied the story of Christ in advance to confuse future believers. That explanation tells you something important. Even the early Christians noticed the similarities. They just had a very different interpretation of them. Mithra was traditionally celebrated on December 25th, the same date Christians would later adopt for the birth of Jesus. He was born in a cave, witnessed by shepherds. He had 12 companions. He performed miracles. He held a sacred Last Supper, and he was associated with resurrection after 3 days. Both Mithra and Jesus were called the light of the world. Both were connected to Sunday as a sacred day. Both were associated with the cosmic battle between light and darkness. Now let's turn to the figure at the center of the world's largest religion, Jesus of Nazareth. Most historians agree that a man named Jesus, or Yeshua in Aramaic, did exist in 1st century Judea. He was a Jewish teacher, possibly a healer, who attracted followers and was crucified by Roman authorities. But the theological Jesus, the Christ of Christian doctrine, carries themes that appear across multiple ancient traditions. He was born of a virgin. His birth was announced by a star. Wise men came from the east to honor him. A jealous king tried to kill him. He was baptized, gathered disciples, performed miracles, died, and rose again. Every single one of those narrative beats has a precedent in older religious traditions. Does that mean the story was invented? Not necessarily. It may mean that the story resonated so deeply because it followed a pattern that human beings already understood. The pattern of the dying and rising God. The pattern of light overcoming darkness. In 1949, a scholar named Joseph Campbell published a book that would change how we understand mythology. He called it The Hero with a Thousand Faces. His central argument was that across all of human history, across every culture that has ever existed, there is one fundamental story. He called it the monomyth, or the hero's journey. A hero is born under unusual circumstances. He is called to adventure. He faces trials. He descends into darkness, often death itself, and he returns, transformed, bringing a gift to humanity. Campbell wasn't arguing that all religions are fake. He was arguing that they're all tapping into something real, deep structures of human experience that we have been telling stories about since the first campfire. Death and rebirth. The dying year and the returning sun. The ego that must be surrendered so the true self can emerge. These aren't just theology, they're psychology. They're the map of human transformation. Let's talk about the Virgin Mother, because this theme is more widespread than many people realize. In Egypt, Isis conceives Horus through divine means. In Persia, Mithra is born from a rock, sometimes personified as a generative mother figure. In Christianity, Mary conceives Jesus through the Holy Spirit. In Hinduism, Devaki, the mother of Krishna, is described as extraordinarily pure at his birth. In Greek mythology, Dionysus is born of a mortal woman and the god Zeus. The virgin birth in many of these cases is not literally about biological virginity. It's about divine origin. The message is, this being comes from another realm. His conception was not ordinary. He belongs to two worlds at once, the divine and the human. It's a narrative device, a way of saying pay attention. This person is different. Perhaps the most powerful recurring theme across all three figures is the pattern of death and resurrection. Osiris is killed, dismembered, and brought back to life by Isis, becoming Lord of the afterlife. Mithra slays the cosmic bull, an act of sacred sacrifice that renews the world. Jesus is crucified, buried for 3 days, and rises on Easter Sunday. Agricultural societies lived and died by the cycle of the seasons. The sun that dies in winter and is reborn at the solstice. The seed that dies in the ground and rises as new life in spring. The death and resurrection pattern isn't surprising in ancient religion. It mirrors the most fundamental rhythms of nature that every human being in every era has experienced. When we look at all of this evidence, scholars and thinkers have arrived at three broad interpretations. The first is the borrowing theory. Early Christianity emerged in a world saturated with Egyptian, Persian, and Greek religious ideas. The early church spread through the Roman Empire, where Mithraism was enormously popular. It's not unreasonable to think that the way the story of Jesus was told and theologized was shaped by the religious vocabulary of its time. The second is the universal archetype theory. This is Joseph Campbell's view. Human beings are wired for certain kinds of stories. We have always needed narratives about birth, death, sacrifice, and renewal. These stories arise independently because they reflect universal human experiences, not because one culture copied another. The similarities are evidence not of plagiarism, but of a shared human nature. The third is the theological view. Many Christian theologians, including C.S. Lewis, have engaged thoughtfully with these parallels. Lewis argued that the pagan myths were good dreams, echoes of a truth that God had planted in human hearts long before the incarnation. When Christ came, the true myth became fact. From this view, the similarities are not a problem for faith. They are preparing for it. It's important to note that mainstream scholars are often more cautious about these parallels than popular writers suggest. Egyptologist Eric Hornung notes that while Isis and Mary share the archetype of the Divine Mother, direct literary borrowing is very difficult to prove. New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman, himself a skeptic of Orthodox Christianity, has actually argued against some of the more dramatic claims, saying that figures like Horus were not described as dying and rising in the same way popular books suggest. The truth is more nuanced than any single video can capture. What the scholarly consensus does support is this: religious ideas traveled extensively in the ancient world. Early Christianity emerged in dialogue with, not in isolation from, other religious traditions. Certain narrative patterns, divine birth, sacred sacrifice, and resurrection appear across multiple cultures, both independently and through cultural contact. And these patterns deserve serious, honest, open-minded study. 3 figures, 3 traditions, 1 enduring question. Are they the same? Are they different? Are they all pointing to something greater than any one of them? The honest answer is, we don't know for certain. And that uncertainty, that space of not knowing, might be the most sacred space of all. What we do know is this: human beings have always reached toward the transcendent. We have always told stories of light overcoming darkness, of death giving way to life, of the divine meeting the human. Whether you are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, secular, or somewhere in between, these ancient stories are your inheritance. They are part of the great human conversation about what it means to be alive, to suffer, to hope, and to believe. And perhaps that's the real miracle. Not that one story is true and the others are false, but that across thousands of years and thousands of miles, human beings keep telling the same story, because they keep needing to hear it. If this video made you think, made you question, or made you see something in a new way, that's exactly what it was designed to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want a dedicated episode on Horus, Mithra, or the historical Jesus, let me know. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Until then, keep questioning, keep seeking, keep the conversation alive.